Today we're talking a little bit more about magic. Yes, with my silly card tricks aside, we are going to be talking more about magic here today for the D20 modern game. Specifically, if you're running a Shadow Chasers or an Urban Arcana setting, really, I kind of consider the two more or less the same. The book does make a distinction between them. Really, if you wanted to think about the difference between Shadow Chasers and Urban Arcana, Shadow Chasers is more like the show Supernatural, where it's almost very little magic, or the magic that is there is very rare, esoteric, kind of rune and script based, whereas Urban Arcana is more like, well, the Jim Butcher series, the Dresden Files, wizards and monsters, all that are real, just like in, Supernatural. It's a bit more of a higher magic kind of setting, and that's kind of what Urban Arcana is, but I tend to just blend the two together anyways. There's plenty of overlap there, and it allows for just a little bit more variety in the campaigns. But back to the subject at hand, and that is, of course, magic. And I'm talking about it because, well, I've covered a magic-based prestige class and also talked about item creation rules, magic item creation rules within the D20 modern setting. Now, we want to talk about this subject because, well, for better or worse, whether you like it or not, magic users in D20 Modern are still pretty overpowered. They're fairly broken. They fundamentally affect the rules of the game in unique and interesting ways and affect the flow of things mechanically pretty well. I mean, they still have access to the haste spell, which, extra attack action, +1 bonus to attack, reflex saves, initiative, armor class, all of that. So, that does a lot to affect the game, and it can affect multiple targets. And they have access to some new, unique, and interesting spells, both arcane casters and divine casters. Probably the biggest limiter, the biggest balancing effect within D20 Modern, and I've touched on it a little bit before, is that spellcasters, whether arcane or divine, are limited to 5th level spells. That's the highest you can possibly go, but even still, you can still count mages, acolytes, ecclesiarchs, archmages as fairly powerful classes. Just the wide array of unique abilities that they have available to themselves make them fundamentally powerful. The way they can affect things mechanically is just absolutely staggering. And so, if you are DMing in a D20 Modern game, sorry folks, just one moment here, I am actually joined today by my most adorable co-host and initiate storyteller, as well as an uninitiated learner into any circles of lore, Atticus. He is, of course, eager to dig into many things beyond his ken. But anyways, we are discussing magic. 5th level magic still offers spellcasters a wide variety of means of just absolutely jacking up a campaign, whatever challenges you may throw before them, just because of the wide array of diverse powers that are available. Not all spells are created equal, some are just kinda really not worth the bother, but other spells, especially spells that normally don't work out so great in, say, Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder, find new life here. Specifically spells like Fireball, for example. In both Pathfinder and 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons, Fireball was kind of not all that great. Sure, it can deal 10d6 points of damage, fire damage, but fire resistance is one of the most common resistances in both those games, if not outright immunity, on top of reflex saves and uncanny dodge and all of these effects that reduce damage pretty rapidly. Fireball tends to not do so great in comparison to spells like haste or summon monster spells. And so, Fireball in D20 Modern, however, does quite a bit better because you have so many flammable fluids available in most modern day settings. I mean, the number of houses constructed from wood, the different kinds of gas like propane or gasoline, oil, a transmission fluid, all of these things serve to make the modern environment surprisingly flammable, which makes the fireball spell fairly destructive. But its newfound destructive capacities also warrant a certain amount of caution. Mages should not just be throwing a fireball out all willy-nilly without care or regard, kind of similar to the Dresden Files or any other setting where magic is real in the modern day and age. A fireball can easily run out of control and cause a lot of attention to start coming your way. And not only that, but again, it's just kind of a powerful spell. You can do a lot with it. So in these games and these campaigns, not only should DMs exercise a certain amount of care and consideration with how much magic they let their players have access to, but players themselves should also take into great care and consideration the effects that their spells and magic will have, and should probably try to at least lean a little bit more towards more subtle magics. And it's the same for magic items as well. The number of magic items available to players is really only limited by the amount of ingenuity they have and what you're willing to restrict them with as a DM. Personally, in the vein of going with more subtle effects and more subtle magics, I recommend bringing in things like gloves of storing, where they can easily hide away things like any magic long swords or whatever melee weapons they might have that could otherwise draw attention, particularly if the players don't have some kind of cover story like doing kendo or fencing or, traditional Western fencing, or going with the SCA or whatever kind of, cover front thing that they have going for themselves. And even then, they're still going to want to exercise some amount of discretion if you're running an Urban Arcana game properly. Now, gloves of storing allow a significant way around it. It's a useful item, but it's not overwhelmingly powerful. But it can give players an edge, especially if they're creative with things, because they can only store one single item within the gloves, but it's an item weighing up to 5 pounds, so they can smuggle in a loaded pistol or a submachine gun or some kind of sword or great axe or even a spear is possible. So you can see though how useful such a thing gets, especially if they're in a fight in a relatively public space or they make enough noise over the course of a fight. And then you could easily bring in items like, they brought in a backpack of holding, but you can still bring in a modern day variant of Heward's handy haversack, which has multiple pockets that work like very smaller versions of a backpack of holding, where they can store multiple items very easily and still have the item that they want to reach for on top, so that anything they draw out is just easily there, ready and for the taking. It still takes a move action to draw the item out, but does not provoke an attack of opportunity, and allows an incredible amount of storage space and discretion for your players. Still a useful item, still in a way powerful, but not something that is outright damage dealing. Now, you may still want to limit the number of items you have your players run around with. Maybe one person has the Heward's handy backpack, and then somebody else has fingerless gloves of storing. Between those two characters, they can easily carry around a good chunk of the group's gear. Now again, that sounds powerful, but it also creates an opportunity for you to start messing with the players. Because if the person with Heward's handy backpack is carrying a significant amount of gear for the group, if that bag gets stolen, as bags do in the modern day and age, the group is kind of screwed, and they're on their own little sub-adventure trying to track down the person that stole it. Now, if there's a spellcaster with them, they can use locate item and figure out a way to track it down from there, find the person that took it. But who knows if they've dug through that bag and found all these other things, what kind of wild stories this person's going to be coming away with. And also, what if that person realizes the kind of deep shit they're in when they find out, oh crap, magic is real, and I just stole a magic bag from somebody, possibly a wizard. Oh god, is Gandalf coming after me? That can still create an interesting story there, and then the players have to decide what to do with this person who's suddenly in the loop and realizes, ah crap, magic is real, these strange monster things are coming after me now, what the hell is going on? So magic, again, can very easily, while it can very easily complicate a game and throw a lot of challenges for you as a storyteller, it can also create a lot of opportunities for you. Don't immediately take a look at something powerful or useful and assume that you need to limit your players' access to it. Lean into it, see how you can use it to make opportunities, and if you do feel like that magic is not quite powerful enough in I couldn't call it a low magic setting if you're doing Urban Arcana, but if you're doing a mid-level magic setting, but you want it to raise up just a little bit more, consider throwing in 6th level spells for the players, but limit it to where they can only cast one 6th level spell per day after they've maxed out, say, being a mage and have taken a level in Archmage or some other appropriate class or homebrew thing that you come up with. And make that 6th level spell costly. Personally, for myself, what I have done in the past running D20 Urban Arcana setting is, don't know if any of you are familiar with the old Dragonlance books, but wizards in that particular setting, when they ran out of spell slots, or at least in the books, when they cast all their magic that they had for the day, they could keep casting. But doing so could potentially kill them. It ate into their life. So 6th level spells should cost hit points. How do you calculate that out? Well, just go with half the spell level. Roll 3d6 each time they do that. And potentially they may get away with only taking 3 to 6 points of damage. Probably, though, on average, they're going to be looking somewhere around 9 to 10 points of damage. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but consider that if a wizard or an acolyte is leaning into casting a 6th level spell, things are probably pretty desperate, or it's a pretty dire time, and they're needing to pull out all the stops. They may have already taken damage as it is, and if they have taken damage, taking another 10 points of damage on top of what they've done, considering these classes are kind of squishy, can be a very challenging choice. Or, a very powerful story choice, because if they only have 12 hit points left, they cast the spell, but they take 15 points of damage and they begin dying. What a dramatic moment in the story to have there. So still, if you're considering doing something like that, consider that particular homebrew rule. But with that said, we're going to go ahead and call it here. I'll try to put together something a little bit more comprehensive, maybe a little bit more detailed, and pull out some of the spells that I feel are fairly particularly useful, and maybe 1 or 2 6th level spells that I might consider throwing into a D20 modern game and recommend them towards you. But we'll call it there. I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. This has been Atticus, the apprentice storyteller and uninitiated into any circles of lore. If you enjoyed today's video, go on down there, hit the like button, and subscribe to the channel, and comment down below your thoughts. But we're going to go ahead and end it there. Thank you all so much for your time, and have yourselves a good night.